We are at the beginning of another year in the gardens, and although the growing season hasn't really started yet, there are lots of things to prepare and plan for. And soon, as the weather warms up, plants will start to grow again in the gardens, and there will be beds to prepare and seeds to sow, and within a couple of months we will be very busy in the gardens. And like every year, there will be quite a few changes in 2023. We plan to develop new growing spaces, explore new methods and crops, radically change some planting plans and keep other plans similar to what they have been for the past few years, with the usual continual adaptation and refinements. We also plan to drop some crops from some spaces, consolidate other areas, and to work to make other tasks much more efficient so that we can have the time to focus elsewhere. And I thought it would be useful to go through it all, to outline the plans for 2023 for all of the different growing spaces that we manage as part of this ever-expanding Red Gardens project. The series of family-scale gardens remains a core part of this project, and the oldest part, with a series of 100 square meters growing spaces, each being managed with a different approach or method. In 2023, we will continue with the 6 gardens that we were growing in last year, and hopefully adding a 7th, but with a reduced range of crops, mainly because we won't be planting as many of the salad or quick rotation crops in these gardens. We want to make these gardens easier to manage without losing the broader explorations of comparing the different methods. There will be the same reduced planting in the simple garden, a radically altered and simplified planting plan in the Polytunnel Garden, and we will continue to grow a diverse range of vegetables in the other 4 gardens, with 3 of them being more directly comparable, with very similar layouts and planting plans. The main changes in the extensive garden will be moderate adjustments to the range of crops and bed layouts, so that this garden will be more directly comparable to the intensive and no-dig gardens, while still maintaining the focus on higher nutritional quality and resilience. We will continue with wide spacing of plants and direct sowing of seeds where possible, into soil that will be dug as usual, with a reasonable amount of higher quality compost to feed the soil. This garden still relies on a complete organic fertilizer to feed the plants, which is a mix of concentrated amendments balanced for the type of soil we have, and I will be adding additional concentrates to amend the nutrients in the soil based on a soil test. I also want to focus more on providing additional feeding for the plants later in the season, as I think this has been a limiting factor for this garden for the past few years. The intensive garden will have a similar layout and range of vegetables, with a higher density of planting and more effort and resources put in. The previous focus on trying to grow more vegetables in this garden will be shifted a bit this year to try to grow more in general, including green manures. I'm interested in maximizing the photosynthesis potential in this garden to try to grow more soil so that we can produce more plants. Essentially trying to limit the amount of bare soil throughout the year, which is something that I haven't been good at in the past. In addition to this significant shift in focus, we have decided to replace the annual double digging of the beds in this garden with the easier and less disruptive use of a broad fork to manage the soil. The no-dig garden is also quite intensive, but we have never cultivated or dug this soil, apart from removing perennial weed roots. This will be the 5th season of following the dowding no-dig method, of mulching the full garden with a layer of compost each season. And because I've realized how infertile the municipal compost that we buy in for the task is, we will also be amending the beds with a concentrated source of nitrogen this year. This garden finally seems to be working, with a buildup of sufficient supplies of compost over the years to adequately feed the plants for most of the season, and it will be interesting to see how it compares to the other 2 gardens. The Polyculture Garden has a very different approach to bed layout and planting plans, and we will continue with the method of dividing the beds into grids or clustered planting. This is the one garden in the set in which we will continue to grow the range of salad and other quick crops, as part of the focus on integrating a diverse range of crops and other beneficial plants. There has always been a tension in this polyculture garden between a random planting and establishing enough order or control to be able to plan and ensure better success with most crops. This garden will continue to take the most work and attention, and has a chance to produce significantly more food than the other gardens, but with a higher risk of failure as well, and it's the garden in which I feel I have the most to learn. The simple garden is easiest to manage and radically different to the polyculture garden beside it, with only 4 crops in a basic crop rotation, with integrated sheet composting as a primary form of adding fertility. This season we will continue with the same 4 crops, with variety trials of carrots and onions, as well as a few different varieties of potatoes and squash. The one big change will be to explore using grass clippings to mulch around the base of the potato plants in order to keep the sun off of the buried potatoes to prevent them turning green and to provide some additional fertility to the plants. I started this garden originally as a reaction to the much more complicated planting plans of the other gardens, and this will be the 7th season with the same basic plan. There is also a 100 square meter polytunnel that has been part of this series of family scale gardens, which I've managed in the past as if it was the only growing space that a family had to grow food in which we tried to grow a wide range of different crops. But this tended to double up on a lot of the crops that were growing in other spaces and took a lot of time. I have decided to really scale back the planting plans for this garden, at least for this season, to try growing a protected cropping version of what is commonly known as the Three Sisters, including a large variety trial of squash with maize or sweet corn and climbing beans for producing dry seeds. This will be a big change with a lot less work, but hopefully still a valuable crop and a lot of experience and learning. There is a 7th space for an outside garden, which I developed years ago as the Perennial Garden, and then abandoned it when it got overrun with persistent weeds. Last year, it was the site of one of the big potato grow bag trials, while holding down the ground cover fabric to kill off some of the established vegetation. I want to redevelop this space into another vegetable garden that is focused on generating all of the fertility for the vegetable plants within the space of the garden itself, with the use of cover crops and green manures. This is the biggest new development in this area of family scale gardens, and for me it is a reaction to all of the compost, fertility, materials, and equipment that I need to bring in for all the other gardens. I want to explore how to grow vegetables without the use of plastics, materials, imported fertility, and other resources, apart from seeds and a few basic tools, and I think this could be really interesting. Watering has always been a big task in the polytunnels, where we use both overhead sprinklers and drip line pipes on the soil, as well as occasional hand watering. In the outside gardens, we have used a movable sprinkler bar and hand watering whenever the rain isn't providing enough moisture for the plants, but this takes a fair amount of regular attention moving the sprinklers during the day. Unlike many other places in the world, watering infrastructure isn't so common here in Ireland, as we generally only have a few weeks every season where watering might be essential. But with the scale of this Red Gardens project, I want to invest in putting drip line watering systems for all of the outside gardens, mainly to save a lot of time for focusing on other tasks. I will also be putting together dripper watering systems for all of the numerous grow bags, which will save a lot of time compared to all the hand watering I did last year, as well as being better for the plants, many of which suffered when the hand watering wasn't enough. I also want to capture rainfall water off of the polytunnels, but this will require additional infrastructure of gutters and storage, as well as an off-grid solar electricity supply, and I'm not sure I'll have the time to put that in this season. There are a few other growing spaces in the same area as the family scale gardens, especially the spaces on either side of the Polytunnel Garden that I want to continue to develop. On one side, we are growing strawberries and want to continue to use some of the space for seed saving and other explorations that don't fit into the other gardens. On the other side, there is a space that still needs some work to remove all of the perennial weeds. I'm not sure what we'll grow in the space this year, perhaps some wheat or another squash variety trial, or perhaps we will sow it with a green manure to start to build the soil health and fertility for next year. The One Rule compost project beside the gardens will continue for another season, which is where we compost most of the material from the family scale gardens. It also works as a community composting facility that quite a few households in the area use to get rid of their household compostable waste. This has worked well in the past few years, and I want to continue to refine the methods, including how often the piles are turned and possibly installing pipes for better aeration. I want to see if we can get more good quality compost in a shorter time out of this space, while still keeping it accessible and without too much work. The other major part of this Red Gardens project is the larger spaces of the black plot, which is across the road on partially degraded and overgrown land that we have been slowly developing over the past few years. The focus of the black plot is to explore growing vegetables on an intermediate scale and to explore things that we can't really fit into the existing structures and methods of the family scale gardens. The first space that I was able to establish in this black plot was a fairly large polytunnel with a slightly larger footprint but quite a bit taller than the other polytunnel. We have been managing this protected growing space for the past few years with minimal disturbance of the soil, and it has been a hugely productive space. But it has been empty over the winter because I ran out of steam last autumn. We will soon be sowing a succession of salad greens and other quick rotation crops in the 5 fixed beds, and this will be followed with lots of tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, or aubergine. This planting will be similar to the one last year in the other similar polytunnel, with a continued focus on different varieties and pruning techniques, as well as possibly grafting some plants onto different rootstocks. The third and newest polytunnel is also in the black plot and was only established a year ago. We had some issues with fertility in the soil last year, and we'll be focusing on making sure that the soil continues to develop and that there is enough fertility for the heavy feeding plants that we want to grow this year. There will be a few early crops before the main planting of salad cucumbers, pickling cucumbers, as well as early and late plantings of climbing beans and courgettes. And we plan to grow a fair amount of sweet corn, melons, and a few other heat-loving crops that are only really suitable for growing in these kind of protected growing spaces here in Ireland. Late last year, we finally established a large trial of 5 different methods for creating a no-till growing space. We set up 5 side-by-side areas, each covered first with cardboard, and then with fertile soil, partially decomposed wood chip, layers of hay, a thick layer of compost, and a lasagna or permaculture deep litter mulch. We are planning to wait until the summer before planting any crops to make sure that the different coverings are able to prevent the existing vegetation from regrowing. If a lot of weeds make it through the coverings, then we may cover the whole area with a fabric for the rest of the season to make sure that pernicious weeds don't come back. But if the space is clear enough, then we plan to plant crops in the long beds so that each crop is growing in all 5 no-till options, so that we can see how the different methods compare. There is another space in between the 2 large polytunnels of the black plot that has been covered with a ground cover fabric for over a year, which was the space for the second large potato grow bag trial last year. By now, the soil under the fabric should be clear of most of the problematic weeds, and a lot of the vegetation will have rotted down. And we plan to clear and level the soil and bring in lots of compost and wood chip to establish 5 long no-till beds. I want to use this space for growing a continual succession of quick rotation crops, including fast-growing roots, lettuce, and other salad crops. I'm hoping to develop a schedule of succession planting dates, a changing selection of crop types, and the use of protective coverings so that we can harvest close to a continual supply of these types of high-value crops for as much of the season as possible. There is another space beside the no-till trial area in which I grew squash last year, and I want to set up another trial of different approaches to amending cultivated soil. I'm interested in comparing the use of biochar, approaches using biology, or using mineralization, and others, where I can grow the same crop across a range of different methods to see how they compare over a few seasons. I'm not sure if we will have the time this spring to get the beds established or the capacity to manage the crops during the year, but that's the direction that I want to take this space, and I at least want to get it started in 2023. The other big project for this year will be continuing with the 2 large potato grow bag trials that we started last year to continue with the explorations of different growing medium and amendment options. I want to consolidate all the bags in one area, to place them over ground cover fabric to start to clear the rough ground at the south end of the polytunnels. The big improvement will be a dripper watering system, as watering all these bags required a lot of time last year, which was a key limitation in the trial, and some of the plants really suffered. There are lots of other things that I want to do, and spaces around the gardens and the black plot that I want to develop. I'm starting to buy in fruit trees and grapevines. I want to get more hens for eggs and managing another composting system, and developing vermiculture bins for composting food waste. I am planning a fair amount of seed saving and variety trials in the gardens and other spaces, and to start to grow more herbs and other types of plants. But of course, all of this depends on how much time we have, and having listed it all here, it does feel like a huge amount of work this season, and a lot to keep track of. As usual, we've probably taken on too much and will likely need to drop some of the plans. Of course, there's also this YouTube channel, which is the third large component of this Red Gardens project. For the past few months, I've been making and uploading more videos than usual, and I want to continue with this more frequent uploads to make videos of all the things that we are doing and stuff that we learn along the way. But this is a lot of work, in addition to growing all that food, trying all these new things, and managing such a diverse range of growing spaces. There's also all the filming and data gathering and analysis that goes along with a project like this. And then there's the writing scripts, filming, editing videos, and responding to all the comments. But I think all of this is worth doing, and thankfully I have Chris helping in the gardens again this year. If you have the capacity and would like to help support this project and my work for the coming year, I've left links to my Patreon and PayPal accounts in the description below. But most importantly, I want to thank everyone for watching.